Cop destroyed black veteran's food truck for no reason, then face went pale when Pentagon called the sound of splintering metal ripped through the quiet morning like a gunshot. And within seconds, years of sweat, pride, and survival lay crushed beneath a police cruiser's bumper. The food truck's bright paint peeled and folded like paper, steam still rising from the grill that had been hot only moments earlier. Grease, spices, and broken dreams spilled onto the cold asphalt as a black veteran stood frozen nearby, his chest tight, his breath shallow, watching the last piece of his new life collapse for no reason he could understand. Before the story goes any further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and standing up for what's right, please take a moment to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to the channel KHstories. Your support helps stories like this reach the hearts that need them most. The man's name was Marcus Reed, and the food truck wasn't just a business to him. It was a promise he had made to himself on a dusty battlefield years earlier, when he lay awake under foreign stars, wondering if he would ever come home, and if home would still have a place for him. Marcus had served nearly a decade in the Army, wearing his uniform with quiet pride, carrying scars no one could see, and learning to survive in a world where every decision could mean life or death. When his service ended, the uniform came off, but the discipline, the pain, and the sense of duty stayed with him. Civilian life, however, did not welcome him gently. Jobs were scarce, bills were relentless, and the weight of being seen as just another statistic pressed down on him daily. Cooking had saved him. His grandmother's recipes, passed down through generations, became his therapy. The rhythm of chopping vegetables calmed his racing thoughts. The smell of spices reminded him of family, of belonging, of something pure and unbroken. After years of saving every spare dollar, working nights, and refusing to quit even when exhaustion clawed at his bones, Marcus bought an old food truck. He painted it himself, bright and hopeful, and parked it legally near a busy downtown corner where office workers, students, and construction crews lined up for his food. The truck became a place of warmth, laughter, and connection. People didn't just come for the meals. They came because Marcus listened, because he smiled, because he made them feel seen. That morning, the sun had barely risen when the police cruiser pulled up. Marcus was setting up, humming softly, unaware that his life was about to tilt. There was no warning that made sense, no clear explanation that justified what happened next. The officer's actions were swift and cold, and before Marcus could process it, the truck was declared obstructive, illegal, a problem that needed to be removed immediately. Marcus tried to keep his voice steady, tried to explain his permits were valid, that he had followed every rule, that this truck was all he had. But reason seemed to evaporate in the air between them. The cruiser moved forward anyway, metal colliding with metal, crushing the side of the truck, snapping hinges, shattering glass. People gathered, phones raised, whispers spreading like wildfire. Marcus stood there, hands trembling, his mind flashing back to moments of chaos he thought he had left behind overseas. He didn't shout. He didn't fight. He simply stared as his livelihood was destroyed in front of him. Inside his chest, something broke open. Not just anger, but a deep, aching grief. This was more than property damage. This was the erasure of his effort, his dignity, his attempt to rebuild a life after serving a country that now seemed to turn its back on him. In the days that followed, the wrecked truck sat in an impound lot like a wounded animal, and Marcus sat in his small apartment, surrounded by silence. Bills piled up. Messages from regular customers filled his phone, asking where he was, if he was okay. He didn't know how to answer. The system felt too big, too heavy. He had faced enemies in uniform, but this felt worse because it came from within the walls he thought were meant to protect him. Friends encouraged him to let it go, to find another job, to accept that life wasn't fair. But Marcus had not survived everything he had survived just to disappear quietly. He filed complaints, he filled out forms, he told his story again and again, each retelling reopening the wound. Most doors closed politely, some slammed shut, and a few never opened at all. Still, he kept going, driven by a stubborn sense of justice that had carried him through darker days. Somewhere deep inside, the soldier remained, refusing to retreat. What Marcus didn't know was that one of the people who had recorded the incident that morning was a former military spouse whose brother still served overseas. She recognized something in Marcus's posture, in the way he held himself even as everything fell apart. She shared the video not for attention, but because it felt wrong to stay silent. The footage spread slowly at first, then faster, reaching corners of the internet Marcus had never imagined. Comments poured in, some filled with outrage, others with heartbreak. People recognized the insignia tattooed faintly on Marcus's arm, the one he rarely spoke about. The turning point came quietly. A call was made, not to a local office, not to a politician looking for attention, but to a department that took service records seriously. Marcus was sitting at his kitchen table, staring at a cold cup of coffee, when his phone buzzed with a number he didn't recognize. He almost ignored it. Almost. The voice on the other end was calm, official, and respectful. It acknowledged his service. It acknowledged the incident. It said his name like it mattered. By the time the Pentagon became involved, the story was no longer just about a food truck. It was about how a man who had given years of his life to his country was treated when he tried to stand on his own 2 feet. It was about accountability. The officer who had acted so confidently that morning was suddenly very aware that his actions were being reviewed far beyond his usual chain of command. The confidence drained from his face as reality set in, and the power dynamic shifted in a way Marcus had never dared to hope for. Investigations followed, paper trails were uncovered, permits were verified, procedures were questioned. The truth, once buried under authority and assumptions, came into the light. Marcus didn't celebrate. He didn't feel vindictive joy. What he felt was exhaustion mixed with a fragile sense of validation. Someone had finally listened. Someone had finally said this was not okay. Support from the community grew into something overwhelming. Donations arrived from strangers who wrote messages about their own struggles, their own fights to be seen. Local businesses offered help. Mechanics volunteered time. Artists offered to repaint. Chefs offered recipes and equipment. The food truck, once crushed and discarded, was slowly rebuilt, stronger than before. Marcus worked alongside them, his hands greasy, his heart cautious but hopeful. The day the new truck rolled onto the street, freshly painted and gleaming under the sun, Marcus stood back and took it in. It wasn't just restored, it was reborn. The lines were cleaner, the colors bolder. A small emblem honoring veterans was painted on the side, subtle but proud. As the grill fired up and the familiar smells filled